This is huge. This is, I think, the most important appointment today. We had Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy, Pete Hegseth, all in top positions. Hegseth as the Department of Defense chief. But this is huge, ladies and gentlemen, and it completely changes the paradigm. The intelligence community, and hit subscribe to this channel right now, was utilized by Democrats, by Republicans, by Washington to go after Trump endlessly, to be used to create, or perhaps possibly, I'm not saying they did for, without a shadow of a doubt, but to fabricate stories about Trump. All the current and former U.S. officials that said to the New York Times and Washington Post that Trump wanted to sell the country to Martians. Well, there could have been, and we know from the attempt to paint Trump as a Kremlin operative, there could have been collusion, for lack of a better word, between journalists, reporters, publications, and the intelligence community. We already know specific journalists that worked to spread the absurd Steele dossier that led to FEC violations. But hit subscribe to this channel right now. The Clinton campaign and DNC paid FEC fines because the Steele dossier was this elaborate hoax that entailed intelligence community officials, journalists, reporters, publications throughout the country, and already you're seeing editorial boards being let go. Media is changing. The intelligence community is already, Trump has taken over, essentially, the American intelligence community. Thank God. Now he can find out how they set up and framed not only Trump, but a whole bunch of people, accusing them of being Kremlin operatives when they were not. There was not a shred of evidence. But hit subscribe to this channel. New York Post, Trump picks ex-National Intelligence Chief John Ratcliffe as Central Intelligence Director. Fox News, Trump picks former Intel Director John Ratcliffe to head Central Intelligence. This is absolutely huge, ladies and gentlemen, because you go from Brennan to John Ratcliffe in a matter of 8 years. In 8 years, it took 8 years for Trump to go from an absolute loyalist of President Obama and the Democratic Party and Washington and the mainstream to John Ratcliffe, who's now going to uncover. See, John Ratcliffe, America's intelligence community, will find out what the previous intelligence community did, and if anyone broke laws, whether they were government officials, those people will be indicted. That's not vengeful. That's not revenge. If somebody committed a crime, going after Trump, setting up Trump, creating a new Cold War, this Red Scare, McCarthy era nonsense. If anyone broke the law, creating a Red Scare, McCarthy era nonsense, talk about xenophobia. The wonderful, morally superior, highly educated liberal Democrats didn't care about the xenophobia they created, calling everyone comrade, just like this liberal McCarthy-era Red Scare fantasy that they created. Well, if anyone broke the law, there will be special counsels. And guess what? Things will be declassified. You're not looking at a Durham probe with Barr. You're looking at the Attorney General. Hopefully he picks Kash Patel, somebody good. But anyway, let's start this to my super chat. Thank you. This is a complete paradigm change. It's unbelievable, ladies and gentlemen. Hit subscribe.
Ratcliffe. Director, it's great to have you this morning. Thank you so much for being here.
Good morning, Maria. Good to be with you.
I want to start on the validity of all of this because we have been doing a
By the way, he's talking about Hunter's laptop now, which was not, of course, a plot by the Kremlin to inform you of how corrupt Democrats are. And John Ratcliffe, the DNI chief back then, now Central Intelligence Director, stated. It was not a plot by another country. Okay? So you have no more hoaxes, no more fantasy, no more highly educated, morally superior, liberal Democratic Party lies, deceitful nonsense. Oh, Hunter's laptop was an elaborate attempt by another country to inform you of how corrupt Democrats are, because everyone knows that other countries want you to know how corrupt Democrats are, thus giving Trump the popular vote, Senate, House, Supreme Court, every battleground state. Notice how they're not bringing up the Kremlin now. Nobody believes it. You would have to be a complete imbecile to believe any of the nonsense from Democrats and the former wonderful, highly educated intel agencies. Trump was set up and framed. End of story. You don't know much about politics if you don't understand how he was set up and framed. And now, John Radcliffe, all of them, Musk, all of them, Trump, his attorney general, will play the James Brown song, The Big Payback.
Dive into this laptop and these emails, which indicate Hunter Biden was cashing in on his father's position. Adam Schiff, from the chairman of the Intel Committee, is out and about this weekend on Sunday morning shows saying all of this news is just Russian disinformation, and it's not true. You are the director of national intelligence. You see more intelligence than anybody in the country other than the president of the United States, so you can tell us what's real and what's fake. Is this Russian disinformation, Director?
So, Maria, it's funny that some of the people that complain the most about intelligence being politicized are the ones politicizing intelligence. And unfortunately, in this case, it is Adam Schiff, the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, who, as you pointed out on Friday, said that the intelligence community believes that Hunter Biden's laptop and the emails on it are part of some Russian disinformation campaign. Let me be clear. The intelligence community doesn't believe that because there's no intelligence that supports that. And we have shared no intelligence with Chairman Schiff or any other member of Congress that Hunter Biden's laptop is part of some Russian disinformation campaign. It's simply not true. And this is exactly what I said I would stop when I became the director of national intelligence. And that's people using the intelligence community to leverage some political narrative. And in this case, apparently Chairman Schiff wants anything against his preferred political candidate to be deemed as not real, and is using the intelligence community, or attempting to use the intelligence community, to say there's nothing to see here. Don't drag the intelligence community into this. Hunter Biden's laptop is not part of some Russian disinformation campaign, and I think it's clear that the American people know that. The intelligence community has not been involved with Hunter Biden's laptop. Hunter Biden is a U.S. person, and
How refreshing it is for an intelligence director, soon to be the director of probably the most powerful agency in the U.S. government, not only a loyalist of Trump, just like Brennan was a loyalist, beyond loyalist, of President Obama and Democrats, but you have somebody who's just going to call balls and strikes. Hunter's laptop was very likely, well, Joe Biden, it was really Joe Biden's laptop. It was really Joe Biden's laptop, okay, was very likely full of bribery and graft. Well, we know from the reporting, Daily Mail, New York Post, that broke the story. The New York Post was banned on then Twitter. The trust and safety team for Twitter was literally working with the bureau and government agencies. You had government curtailing speech. That is what is called free speech, or the lack thereof. When the rebuttal from very unintelligent people is, well, you're favoring censorship? Yeah, I'm favoring censorship for age-appropriate material. If you're of a certain age and it's legal, then fine. But if you're of a certain age and it's inappropriate, we've always had age-appropriate material. So the far left or progressives or whatever say, oh, well, that's called censorship also. Yeah, it's called age-appropriate Not everyone can see certain things that, Bill Clinton and Anthony Weiner love to see. So it's called age appropriate, a standard where you have to be a certain age. Fine. But preventing and censoring Americans from learning about the corruption that exists within the Democratic Party is not only censorship, it destroys democracy. Democrats talked about democracy as they tried to dismantle it piece by piece. Oh, and by the way, information that misinforms is free speech. You have to develop an argument that is good enough and thoughtful or strong enough, powerful enough to defeat information that misinforms. You have to have a compelling enough argument so that any information that misinforms, people will not believe. So when Democrats say, well, what about information that misinforms? Shouldn't we stop that from the public? Yeah, the public is smart enough to realize nonsense from the Democratic Party and nonsense from the Republican Party. You don't stop the flow of information.
He would be subject to any investigation regarding fraud or corruption would be rightfully the jurisdiction of the FBI. So the FBI has had possession of this. What I can say, without commenting on any investigation that they may have into corruption or fraud, is to say that their investigation does not center around Russian disinformation, and the intelligence community is playing no role with respect to that.
So what are we supposed to do? Hear Adam Schiff calling it Russia disinformation 2 weeks before an election so that people are under the impression that this is not real? So is Adam Schiff lying to the American people? This is an elected official.
Yeah, so Maria, what we do is we tell the truth. And my role as the Director of National Intelligence is to not allow people to leverage the intelligence community for a political narrative that's not true. And in this case, Adam Schiff saying that this is part of some Russian disinformation campaign and that the IC has assessed that or believes that is simply not true. So I appreciate the opportunity to be able to tell the American people that that's the case. And I'll continue to do that, whether it's Republicans or Democrats. If they try and leverage the intelligence community for political gain, I won't allow it.
Well, I mean, what do we know? I mean, the FBI has been sitting on this for a year, Director Ratcliffe. Why didn't the FBI raise this issue while President Trump was being impeached? If they had this information since...
Because they wanted Trump to be impeached. That's why the impeachment took place. Because you had America's intelligence community siding with Democrats, or you had certain officials siding with Democrats. If you watch this channel, you knew what was going on. I mean, there's a lot of great channels. I've been telling you this for 4 years. Or no, what? 7, 8 years. I've been telling you exactly what's going on, and it's pretty obvious. They were setting up and framing Trump, trying to impeach him, and it led to a complete domination of American politics. Trump has the Senate, the House, Supreme Court, won every battleground state, the popular vote, and the presidency. Every single thing from convicting Trump, which will go nowhere, they essentially dropped it already, to impeaching him twice only made him stronger, because every single time the average American voter, or the average American in general, said, yeah, they're going after Trump. And the Democrats haven't changed. Their entire playbook is throw as much mud and nonsense at Trump, but they've reached a point of diminishing returns. The Democratic Party and media have reached a point of diminishing returns. The more they go after Trump, the less that people trust them. Because the worst thing you could say about Trump is you don't like his policies or you don't like his personality, and end there. He didn't sell the planet to Martians or try to. Current and former U.S. He didn't say fallen Americans are losers. This is, of course, gossip, hearsay, or today what's called journalism. Nobody trusts reporters and journalists and media anymore. You lied so much about Trump, your credibility is in the toilet. And Trump gets only stronger every single day. This is only the beginning. Everyone who wanted to set up and frame Trump, look, he doesn't have an enemies list. He has a list of people who broke laws, not an enemies list. Remember when Trump was indicted and the wonderful, morally superior liberal Democrats said, well, of course, he was indicted. There's enough evidence. Great. He's going to indict people now. There will be more evidence than there ever was against Trump, most of which was fabricated.
It's November, December of 2019. 2 months later, January 16th, was the impeachment trial, which went all the way until February 5th. No mention from the FBI what they were sitting on. And the impeachment trial was all about President Trump's phone call with the head of Ukraine. Wouldn't that have been the opportunity for the FBI to...
And that leader literally said numerous times, Trump did not pressure me. But they still impeached him. They impeached Trump over phone calls. Okay, meanwhile, there's very likely bribery and graft on laptops. I mean, Clinton's servers was a cybersecurity nightmare. Almost certainly government agencies knew everything, had every single email, even the one she deleted. But again, that's illegal. You can't transfer top secret intelligence onto emails outside the U.S. government. You cannot do that. It's from a cybersecurity perspective illegal. But of course, Adam Schiff and others, Comey didn't even mention how the Honorable James Comey didn't even mention how classified data was transferred onto Clinton servers or from Clinton servers onto those cell phones. But the statute of limitations has run out, I believe. Now we're on to bribery and graft, which in Joe Biden's laptop. So, I mean, like, you do all of these things that Trump could never get away with. You downplay all of them while, thinking a phone call is going to change the electorate move everybody on your side. You get short-term victories in Congress, and you have nothing to show for it 8 years. Nothing except high inflation, high interest rates, endless quagmires around the world, invasions around the world. Trump has complete and total domination. Politically. He's not an authoritarian. He won't use the military. Yeah, if you try to destroy cities, he's going to use the National Guard. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't destroy cities. Don't cause property damage and try to end people's lives throughout the country because you're upset that Democrats lost everything. Because if you do, he's going to use the National Guard, which, by the way, President Obama did also. Anyway, let's continue.
Say, hold on, we have this and we're investigating it.
I think so, Maria. From my perspective, you remember during the impeachment, I was a member of Congress at the time, and I would remind everyone that during that time, the first administration to express concern about Hunter Biden and his relationship with Burisma and what was going on in the Ukraine was the Obama administration. It wasn't the Trump administration, and that was raised during the impeachment trial. But again, those are fair questions for the FBI, and I heard Senator Johnson's concerns about that, and the FBI should be providing that information to him and other members of Congress.
So Trump is, in the Constitution, the executive branch, the president can fire anyone within the executive branch. The DOJ, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Central Intelligence, National Security Agency, all of these fall under the executive branch. It's within the Constitution. The leader of the executive branch is the president. So he can pick a new bureau director tomorrow, Trump. He probably will. The bureau director, and especially the attorney general, he picks the attorney general, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, that'll be maybe, who knows? Who knows? Maybe that'll be tomorrow. It should be early, so you know what Democrats are going to try to do. But they don't have the Senate. In fact, there's a sizable lead now. Gained 4 seats. Well, it's 53-47. So, and you have Trump Republicans taking over. increasing the lead in the House and the Senate. Democrats, as a political party, are done for the next 10 years as a political party. The same, if they focus on economic issues, then they can rebound. If they focus on trying to use media and condemn and judge and disown friends and family and latch on to very warped ideology, fringe, left-leaning, weird ideology that most Americans are like, what? Then they'll continue to lose every 4 years. Vance will go 8 years, at least 4 years. Because who do they have to stop Vance in 4 years? AOC? Okay, good. AOC, Vance. Let's see. AOC would increase, Vance would increase his lead in the popular vote over AOC from Trump. He would get more people in the popular vote.
And to the American people, to the extent it's not related to an investigation. But again, to underscore the first point that I made, this has nothing to do with the intelligence community or Russian disinformation. If it was, I would know that. So to be clear, it's not.
But this is the same situation that we faced around the narrative that President Trump colluded with Russia. And you were the congressman investigating much of this during 2018 and 2019. You joined me on my program many.
The post office, okay? The U.S. Post Office, in my view, is a lot more important for the country. Getting letters, getting packages, not just from UPS or FedEx, whatever. The post office. A country must have a functioning postal system, service. Okay? That's actually a national security issue. Most people don't think about that. But having a functioning post office, if you have all these companies or email, if whatever, there's a, heaven forbid, national power outage or regional power outage or whatever, you do need a functioning post office. Why am I bringing that up? That's more important in my view. More important. The U.S. Postal Service is actually more important than a lot of these revered agencies. Okay? For the country, for the future of the country, for national security. But you don't see the post office setting up and framing Trump. That's kind of my point here. You have these agencies that, like the U.S. Postal Service, provides a specific job, service, and everyone knows what it does. Not everybody knows what these agencies do. Not everybody knows what they do. Well, what do? They're supposed to protect us from adversaries. They're supposed to gain intelligence on our adversaries. They're not supposed to set up incoming presidents. Again, if you stumbled upon this and you're a wonderful, morally superior liberal Democrat and you think that the sky is falling, you need to understand that you did this to yourselves. You cheated Bernie Sanders. What you did to Biden was 1,000 times worse than what you did to Bernie Sanders. And then you have Joe Biden in the Make America Great Again red outfit, which was hilarious and awesome. But Democrats continue to cheat candidates in their primaries, which are just pure performance art. Why even have a primary? Why have a convention? Just pick. This is like, I'm not being facetious. If you're the Democratic Party, you want to win again, be honest. Appoint somebody 2 years prior and say that we've appointed this person. Okay, you want AOC or Adam Schiff to be a nominee? Well, then do it. Just say we've appointed AOC as the 2028 nominee. She will be our nominee. We've appointed her in a secret selective process that is totally legal because it's the Democratic Party. That's fine. That's honest. We will be doing away with primaries, and she will then speak 2 years from now or 4 years from now, whatever, in 2028 during the convention. Nobody will care. Democrats will not care. Why go through the charade? Oh, who do you think's going to win in Iowa? Oh, is it Bernie Sanders? Oh, no. They had 50 different Dungeons and Dragons rolling the dice and he lost. It's totally fair. They do this every 4 years. They cheat their candidates. Bernie Sanders would have won probably 2 years. If not 2016, he would have won 4 years later. Not that I care. I used to be the biggest Bernie Sanders booster on the internet, according to the Huffington Post. And the unofficial scribe of Sanders' most hardcore voters, according to the Washington Post. I bring that up only, because it's a amusing trivia at this point. But Bernie Sanders is part of the system. Bernie Sanders is much more closely aligned to Central Intelligence than Trump ever was. Because Bernie Sanders was cheated, said nothing about it, then helped promote the absurd McCarthy era that they used against him, by the way. They said that Bernie Sanders benefited from Vladimir, the Kremlin's help. And then he said, oh, Kremlin, I don't want your help. We can go on forever. It was so sad and pathetic to see.
Many times asking the FBI to release documents. They didn't. They sat on documents so people did not really understand. It took you coming out just a few weeks ago and declassifying handwritten notes that John Brennan wrote, which indicated Hillary Clinton had the idea to tie President Trump to Russia. And the FBI knew it. Again, that was not released.
And Clinton's campaign and the DNC paid an FEC fine. But of course, Trump was convicted of FEC violations in New York, which is unconstitutional. A state cannot convict anyone of a federal crime.
Until a couple of weeks ago by you. How long did the FBI sit on that?
Well, Maria, so to remind people what I declassified, it was authentic Russian intelligence. It was Russian intelligence that was briefed by the former CIA director, John Brennan, to President Obama and Vice President Biden. And then it was properly referred by the CIA to the FBI for investigation.
I love Trump, okay? But the one thing that he did, and this is when I first started the channel, really, in 2017, when they went after Michael Flynn, he should have called their bluff, like in poker. He should have just simply said, Flynn is staying. Had he done that, almost all of it, the attempts to go after him, the Mueller probe, none of it would have taken place. None of it would have taken place. Okay? Because what they did first is they tried to remove his national security advisor. They said that Mike Pence, that they said that he lied to Mike Pence, which was nonsense. And Mike Pence, of course, did nothing but just fall in line. So Trump had all of these people around him that were giving him bad information, and he should have just stayed with Michael Flynn, not, kept him there as his national security advisor and said, what do you have? What did this man do wrong? Which was nothing. He was set up by a number of intelligence officials, some of whom went to interview him. And during the interview, that was a setup in and of itself. I wrote in the Federalist that President Trump should pardon Michael Flynn, which is what happened. But had he stayed with Michael Flynn, the entire house of cards in terms of the attempt to get Trump would have fallen, I think, would have crumbled. I don't know. I could be wrong. But I think that a big part of it would have been prevented from taking place. Love Trump. It's not I mean, he didn't understand. Now he understands that Trump, a person tried to take his life and took the life of a firefighter who was protecting his family. Okay? An individual, of course, totally only by himself, had nothing to do with anyone else. Nothing to do with anyone else. An individual tried to take Trump's life. Definitely nothing to do with anyone else. So he knows. Trump knows how corrupt and nefarious and sinister his adversaries are. He's playing for keeps. He's going to listen to James Brown's The Big Payback every single day on continual loop.
And it all related to a Hillary Clinton plan to create Trump-Russia collusion narrative that wasn't true. It wasn't just the FBI that knew that, though. It was the intelligence community and our law enforcement community that knew that. And I think everyone knows at this point that Hillary Clinton did create the Trump-Russia collusion narrative. She hired Christopher Steele for that purpose, and it was used in connection with the Steele dossier, was used for FISA applications and all of that. I think what's different about when I declassified that information, it was the first time that members of Congress and the American people know now that our intelligence community and our law enforcement community were aware of that information before the Crossfire Hurricane counterintelligence investigation was ever opened. And those are the issues that John Durham is looking at, and those are the issues that have resulted in what we know.
So the Durham probe, in hindsight, was never going to go anywhere because the Attorney General didn't want it to really go anywhere. And you had and they said, well, no one was indicted, or no one was convicted. Yeah, people were actually guilty of what they were indicted for. The government officials who happened to be the prosecution witnesses went to bat for the defendants. Again, the government officials that were the witnesses for the prosecution actually defended the defendants on the witness stand. You're not going to get that this time around. And you're going to get probably different jury selection also. Look, the bizarro world that we've lived in, the world where Democrats dominated media, politics, that's done. They have wasted all their political capital, and they have nothing to show for it. They were terrible at governing. They were terrible at governing. All they did was spread these absurd, nonsensical, completely irrational fantasies, lies, hoaxes, farces. Trump was a Kremlin operative, and the Kremlin wants you to know about Hunter's laptop. And then you had Twitter, which was basically the Democratic Party completely funneling, or I should say censoring and deciding what Americans could learn and know about and what Americans couldn't. Now you don't have any of that. Now any corruption, anyone who broke the law trying to set up and frame Trump will go to jail.
Aspects of that counterintelligence investigation were illegal. They were criminal. We know that. We know what happened at the FISA court was illegal. And as a result, one person has already pled guilty and will go to jail. And hopefully, as a result of John Durham's investigation, we'll ultimately find out who else was involved, what other crimes were committed. And, that process will have to play out. But you're right, Maria. Remember when we started all of this and we were doing those interviews, everyone said this is a bunch of nonsense. There's no abuse at the FISA course. There was no criminality there. And I told you.
Then you had, what would take place, and Inspector General Horowitz found this out. Intel officials, government officials would give now listen, this is really interesting. Government officials would give information that misinforms to liberal journalists. Their names shall remain nameless, okay? But you could do 2 seconds of research and you'll know a number of people who worked. Their sources were government officials, many of whom were linked to the Durham probe and going after Trump. But government officials gave information, false, absurd, nonsensical, completely irrational information to numerous journalists, liberal Democrats who happen to be quote unquote journalists. Those journalists then wrote stories using the false, completely fabricated information about Trump. The judges used the published material to then sign surveillance warrants. And then the media said, the same media that was fed information that misinforms from government officials said, oh, look, the judges were completely unbiased. They allowed surveillance of Trump's team because obviously Trump's team was working with the Ruskies. When in reality, it was government officials either deceiving, or working alongside liberal journalists who were in the tank for the Democratic Party, almost certainly, publishing information that eventually was used by judges to surveil Trump's incoming team and other people. So the whole thing was this circular, propaganda machine. And that's not the only thing they would do. I mean, these articles would then be used, like, for example, to ban Trump on the Colorado ballot. The hysteria, well, Trump tried to foment a rebellion. It's all over the place. That was nonsense also because people were let in, doors were open, and people were actually acquitted because Tucker Carlson showed footage of people being acquitted. So, I mean, again, what Democrats and media have done, which is why trust in media is an all-time low, they take a kernel of truth, or they just take blatant lies, and they say, oh, we heard Trump said this. This is called journalism. No, it's called gossip and hearsay. Okay? If they simply reported on Trump the way a normal journalist would report, he'd go 8 years. He would have gone 8, but everything was sensationalized. And so now the major advantage Democrats had, which was media, the editorial boards are actually being fired or let go or they're resigning. You're going to have more conservative publications throughout the country. Media, the trust in media is an all-time low. To get it back up to where it may be somewhat close to where it was, they'd have to be more conservative in their reporting, which was actually more realistic. So there goes the most important advantage Democrats had.
Look, I've seen these underlying applications, and I know what I know. And what happened here was illegal and it was improper. And ultimately, we got to the truth.
Well, I'm talking with the Director of National Intelligence this morning, John Ratcliffe, and you just heard President Trump and then Congressman Adam Schiff pushing the blame on the Kremlin, claiming Russia is responsible for the Hunter Biden email story. And I'm back with Director Ratcliffe. Director, how is it possible that an elected official gets away with going on television and saying something as false as these emails, Hunter Biden situation is not true, it's disinformation?
So one other element here, it was never about Hunter Biden. Okay, I'm not going to bat for Hunter Biden now. I'm just saying it was never, this was Hunter Biden's alleged criminal activity has nothing to do with Hunter Biden. It's all about Joe Biden. It's all about Joe Biden and nothing to do with Hunter. What I'm trying to say is, why do you think people would give money to this person? Well, because of Joe, who was the big man in the emails. And so this was all about, very likely, possibly, bribery and graft of a former vice president, former senator, eventual president, who was then ousted by his vice president for the good of the country. Again, if you're if you're a Hollywood celebrity, you're, what's his name? Who is the guy who wrote in the Washington Post? Very famous. You see now, it's like these celebrities are so irrelevant. Like 10, 15 years ago, you would remember them in 2 seconds. George Clooney. Okay. Very famous George Clooney. Very famous. Great movies, all that stuff. George Clooney writes, oh, yeah, for the good of the country, you should step down. Why did George Clooney tell people to vote for Biden 4 years ago, only to then tell people 4 years later that Biden needs to step down? The same issues Biden had during that debate were the same issues he had 4 years ago. And again, Democrats lied through their teeth while pontificating about Trump lying. I mean, at a certain point, you lose. It was people like De Niro, people like Kimmel and Colbert that helped Democrats lose the popular vote, the presidency, the Senate, the House, the Supreme Court. Because they don't understand the average person sees right through their nonsense. Trump was never a Kremlin operative. He was never an authoritarian. He was never a despot. He was never a danger to the planet. These are hyperbolic, hysterical, apoplectic claims that only an imbecile would believe. But then again, I mean, you have Hollywood full of very delusional people.
From the Kremlin, even after 4 years, 3 years really, where Adam Schiff went on lots of shows and said that President Trump colluded with Russia.
By the way, if you're a celebrity and you're leaving the country, please leave. Go, and you have the money to go anywhere in the world. If you said that you're leaving, leave. If you say that you're leaving, if you're a celebrity or a billionaire and you're saying, I'm leaving if Trump wins, God, we're waiting. We're all waiting. You just anywhere in the world. Get a beautiful apartment anywhere, a beautiful house, a mansion anywhere in the world. My God. You don't have to stay here. It's fine. It's fine. But don't say you're going to leave and then stay.
And that collusion was in plain sight. Why is there no accountability? He's an elected official. How does he come out on the news media and say all of these things if it's not true, Director?
Well, unfortunately, as you know, Maria, I was a member of Congress, and members of Congress have the ability and have a platform to say things, and to say those things not under oath.
So that was 4 years ago. This is just a couple of months ago. John Ratcliffe is solid, awesome. He is the antithesis of John Brennan.
Joining us is John Lee Ratcliffe.
By the way, it was Brennan who said during congressional testimony, like, do you have evidence that Trump colluded with the Kremlin? And he says, I don't do evidence, I do intelligence. That should have told everyone what was happening.
Who had a front row seat for most of DOJ's issues over the past several years. He investigated DOJ in Congress and was once the United States Attorney. Director Ratcliffe, thank you for being here. Happy Father's Day to you. Let's start with a laptop. Why in the world would federal prosecutors use Russian disinformation to prosecute the president's son?
Well, Trey, you can imagine I've gotten that question a lot this week, and a lot of people saying, well, do you feel good that you've been vindicated and this has all been proven to be true, as if it was some open question. Trey, this has always been a settled matter. It's never been open to discussion or opinion. Either the government, has the murder weapon with the defendant's DNA all over it, or they don't. And in this case, the government always had Hunter Biden's laptop with the evidence of his crimes on it. And so, that wasn't a matter of judgment or opinion. That was based on conversations that I was having at the time with the Attorney General.
So fast forward 4 years, the Twitter trust and safety team lied to the American public. The then Twitter trust and safety team 4 years ago did more to harm national security and democracy than any information campaign from another country. They gleefully sided with Democrats. And like I said, these types of things led to complete and total domination of the government by Trump. Thank God.
Bill Barr and with the FBI director, Christopher Wray, and we put out statements because people like Adam Schiff and then later these 51 intelligence officials were attempting to mislead the American people about that. And, the problem, Trey, is that some of the people on that letter that organized that, Jim Clapper, John Brennan, Mike Morrell, these are the same people that did the same thing in 2016 when they ran the first Russia collusion hoax. And so, at some point it crosses over from campaign dirty trick into actual election interference, and it's something that Merrick Garland should investigate, but he won't. And so, the only accountability is going to come if and when Donald Trump is elected and a Trump Department of Justice seeks to hold people accountable under the law.
A Trump Department of Justice seeking to hold people accountable under the law. You better believe that Democrats are going to say, oh my God, Trump is a despot, he's an authoritarian, he's a tyrant. Look, he's indicting these people who tried to set up and frame him illegally.
Speaking of A.G. Garland, one other thing he's not going to do is prosecute himself. So contempt of Congress is not going to go anywhere. But, as you know, the justice system is going to be on the ballot this fall. So you're a former U.S. attorney. Believe it or not, folks on both sides of the aisle respected your legal acumen when we were in Congress together. So how do we get politics out of the justice system?
You get politics out of the justice system by indicting the people who broke laws in an attempt to frame and set up Trump. Trump was set up and framed, okay? He's the actual protagonist in this whole, this never-ending chapter of intelligence agencies and media and journalists and the Democratic Party going after Trump. He's the protagonist here. Books will be written eventually by conservative or people who support Trump years from now, and they will explore. They've already been written, but I mean, you could read George Papadopoulos' book, Manafort's book. You can read, hopefully, Mike Flynn writes a book, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. And so, Lieutenant Colonel Mike, hopefully you'll be able to see, actually, Greg, Jarrett, a whole bunch of people, but you have a lot of, like, the future of this country in about 5, 6, 7, 10, 20 years. People will be reading how America's government turned on an incoming president. Okay? It was all lies. There was not a shred of evidence that Trump worked with the Kremlin. Not one shred. Nothing. The only thing they can come up with is opposition research, which led to not even one person altering their decision from Clinton to Trump. There was not even a shred of evidence that Trump was a Kremlin operative. They completely and utterly set up and framed Trump. And people broke the law, and they got away with it. But now you have John Radcliffe, you have others who can declassify anything they want to. Trump can declassify anything he wants to, really. It's not that difficult. And it's like, we saw this in real time when it was happening. The nonsensical impeachments. Trump would not have been impeached the first time had we all known about Hunter's laptop, which was really Joe Biden's laptop.
Well, Trey, like you talked about, in the blink of an eye, the Biden DOJ said, no, we're not going to prosecute Merrick Garland or take any action for him ignoring congressional subpoenas. And so, in the short term, he's going to get away with it. In the long term, the problem for Merrick Garland is he's Jim Comey. He's going to be remembered just as Jim Comey is always going to.
The Honorable James Comey is on CNN. Nobody really cares about this, but I find this fascinating. Nobody cares about this. The Honorable James Comey was on CNN willing to testify against the Honorable Andrew McCabe. Does anyone find that amusing? This was about 4 years. No, this was about 8 years ago. No, about 6, 7 years ago. Andrew McCabe was let go from the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And then I think it was Jake Tapper, I'm not exactly sure, or Wolf Blitzer, who asked the Honorable James Comey. And James Comey said, potentially could. He was willing to testify against McCabe. Do you find that amusing? I find that very amusing.
Be remembered as the guy that took the FBI's reputation as the premier investigative law enforcement agency from the top to the bottom, from here to here. Merrick Garland is doing the exact same thing with this Department of Justice and a two-tiered system of justice that is so apparent to the American people. I mean,
if I love Trump, Okay? If Trump has private servers, investigate, and if he that's a crime. If Trump has a laptop full of bribery and graft, that's a crime. If Trump commits a crime, an actual crime, yeah, go after the crime. But if he doesn't commit a crime and you fabricate everything and you allow rampant criminality from the Democratic Party, that is complete, not just partisanship. Everyone knows that government agencies sided with Democrats. Trump could never have gotten away with private servers. He could never have gotten away with a laptop full of bribery and graft. He could never get away with 50 intel officials saying, oh, yeah, this laptop that Eric Trump or Donald Trump Jr. owned was a Kremlin operation. Nobody would believe that. But we couldn't talk about that 4 years ago.
Merrick Garland is the one saying, well, we have to respect the verdict that came out of New York. And at the same time, he's saying, but we're not going to respect congressional subpoenas that we don't like, or we're going to back up the president on Supreme Court opinions that we don't like. And so, I think that accountability will come from the American people. We saw over in Europe, France is having to call snap elections, the results in the EU. All of this is a reflection of what's happening over there. And I think we'll see the same thing in this country. And I think it's going to be up to it's going to be up to a Trump Department of Justice to restore this idea of, blind justice and equal treatment under the law.
The only way to get Democrats to stop indicting Trump is for Trump to find out who broke the law in an effort to indict him. That's it. If you live by intelligence agencies, and then the intelligence agencies, these are government agencies. Eventually, it took 8 years, eventually they'll be led by John Ratcliffe and Elon Musk. What did Democrats think was going to happen? That they would control government forever? I mean, they're terrible at governing. Did they think that they would control government forever? Eventually, Trump or J.D. Vance eventually would take the reins. They would appoint John Ratcliffe, Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy, Pete Hegseth, and then the Attorney General must be amazing, hopefully Kash Patel. What did you think was going to happen? All of these government officials that did everything possible to stop Trump, did they think that eventually, that possibly Trump could win? I mean, they were under the belief that Trump would never, ever again take power, when obviously hoaxes aren't going to stop this man. Okay? A projectile couldn't stop him, thank God, but it ended the life of a firefighter who was protecting his family. Notice the lack of investigative journalism from the same liberal journalists who, went after Trump. But it's like, what did they think was going to happen? That you would never have a changing of the guard in the intelligence agencies? Of course you were going to. Of course. Of course the government would change eventually. It takes time. It took 8 years. Now you're going to have a whole lot of indictments and convictions. A different jury. You're going to have different jury selection process in D.C. and other places.
I actually knew, Director, that you would not feel vindicated when this was exposed, because I thought that your feeling would be one of disappointment, that the intelligence community had allowed itself to be used as pawns in a political race. So I never thought you would feel vindicated. I thought you would feel disappointment and sadness.
Pete Hegseth, excellent choice to run DOD. Okay? Everyone Trump appoints is not a Washington person. All of the major powerful positions that Trump has appointed, whether it's Ratcliffe, Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy, Pete Hegseth, Homan, these aren't Washington people. And get ready for people to resign / be forced out. This is the best thing to happen to the country, not just because my quote-unquote side is winning. I would have voted Biden if we had a great economy and a great foreign policy. Objectively, the economy stunk. Interest rates doubled for mortgage rates. Inflation was through the roof. Crime. The border is a huge national security issue. Invasions throughout the world. But see, again, what I view as national security, what you view as national security, what Trump views as national security is not what Democrats view as national security. They view words as national security, like actual words. I'm not even joking. They view like words as policy or national security. I'm not going to go into it, but they don't view the border as national security. They don't view setting up and framing Trump as a problem. They don't view endless wars. I'm not being belligerent. Democrats do not view invasions throughout the world as a national security. They don't view nuclear confrontation as a problem. They don't think it's even possible. They don't care. They don't view the border as a national security concern. Like, I'm not being belligerent. This is the truth. Democrats do not view the border as a national security concern. Okay, I do. You do. If you're watching, likely. Trump does. So it's not about like, for me, Trump is infinitely better than Harris or Biden, infinitely better because the things he cares about, I care about. The things Democrats care about, some of them are very important, but then again, it's like Biden released strategic petroleum reserves into the country because his energy policy stunk, caused inflation, literally sued by oil and gas associations. Nobody talks about this. Biden was sued by oil and gas associations at the beginning of his presidency. Within the lawsuit, you can read, they said it's going to cause inflation to go sky high. Then it went to 9%. Before inflation went to 9%, the Fed, Biden's administration, his press secretary said, well, it's temporary. This is temporary. Inflation is not an issue. Then they raised interest rates exponentially. And then they ignored the topic and lost miserably.
And I think I was right. John Lee Ratcliffe, happy Father's Day. Thank you for joining us on a Sunday night.
Rob, thank you. Thank you, Rob. He needs to.
One of the great benefits of this job is that I don't do politics and don't engage in it.
He only did politics. He only did politics.
But with regard to that letter, I didn't. Wasn't my idea. Didn't ask for it. Didn't solicit it. And I think the testimony that the former Deputy Director of the CIA, Mike Morrell, put forward confirms that.
Well, joining me now is John Ratcliffe, former Director of National Intelligence, former Texas Congressman. John, he says Morrell testified that it was Blinken who called him to put the letter together. And now he's saying this to our reporter, that Blinken. I don't get any of this. This is a flat-out lie.
By the way, they can also lie in testimony, but then nothing will ever happen. So he's probably telling the truth, but Brennan lied. I think it was 2014 when they were surveilling Dianne Feinstein. I mean, this is the thing. It's like the pictures of President Obama and George W. Bush. That is why people voted for Trump. If you look at a picture of George W. Bush and President Obama, you're like, oh, the good old days. Oh, and the Republicans and Democrats loved each other. They were the same. It was the same foreign policy, endless militancy. That's how you go from Bernie Sanders to Trump. A lot of people don't understand, like, well, how do you go from Bernie to Trump? Well, 2016 Bernie Sanders was very similar to 2024 Trump or 2020 Trump.
Yeah, so someone should take the shovel out of Anthony Blinken's hand before he finishes digging his own grave. Look, two people, Mike Morrell.
Thank you, Judith. Thank you.
is the one that fingered Anthony Blinken. And when it comes to these two individuals, one of them was under oath when they gave testimony, and that was Mike Morell. And what he said under oath unequivocally was, absolutely, the impetus for this was the call that I received from Anthony Blinken. He also said unequivocally, we did this to help Joe Biden in the debate and to help Joe Biden win the presidency. So, you know,
ladies and gentlemen, the paradigm has changed forever, okay? Biden is like the new Jimmy Carter. After Jimmy Carter, you had 8 years of Reagan, 4 years of George Herbert Walker Bush. And the reason the Clintons were so powerful in the Democratic Party is that you finally got the Clintons 12 years later. So they kind of saved the Democratic Party. But I think that you're probably going to have 8 years of Vance. You'll definitely have 4 years of Vance. Okay? Trump's going to drill, and the energy policies are going to be different. And I think I think there's still, just because the stock market, I don't want it to happen during Trump's administration, but I think a stock market crash is still on the horizon. But we'll get out of it because Trump is very good on economic issues. His energy policies will promote growth. His foreign policy, his trade policies, he'll be good for unions, Trump. Okay, tariffs, unions want tariffs. Not the European Union, the unions within Europe want tariffs. Unions in the U.S. want tariffs. Okay, tariffs are short-term strategic trade actions. They're not long-term. You don't want to, tariff forever. But Democrats kept Trump's tariffs and his tax cuts. Anyway, the point is Trump will do very well in terms of the economy, foreign policy. He will work to end wars, and he'll be a great president. What he'll do also is go after every single person that committed a crime, going after him, which is likely a number of individuals, actually a lot of people. You're seeing media change also. You're seeing editorial boards resign. They worked so hard to destroy Trump, and in the end, he took over the entire U.S. government. And it's actually, the country's going to benefit greatly. Okay, Democrats had taken over the U.S. government for a long time with the help of never Trump Republicans. And all we saw was, terrible economy, terrible foreign policy. So anyway, hit subscribe to this channel. Huge, huge news. To my super chat, thank you. Hit subscribe. I'll be back.